way.
Yeah, it's just all fascinating. And to have seen that in the movie too, like from that
Yeah.
perspective, like, oh my God, like, oh, it's great.
Well, you need
It's
to
just-
go down and see a shuttle launch because
Yeah.
there's not many left. So.
Yeah, no, oh, no, it's sad, huh? That's sad.
It's a little sad because I think
Well,
we
I would ask you, is that
figured it out.
bittersweet? Is it bittersweet that it's...
There is, I would tell you that the odds are a little too low to continue to fly a lot.
Yeah.
You know, fly another 5 missions, sure, but the odds are somewhere around, well, they quote them as 1 in 78, but I'd say they're probably about 1 in 100. And 1 in 100 odds is probably a little low to
Yeah.
continue to do it regularly.
Yeah.
Because you eventually will have an accident, as we've shown. So.
Yeah. Well, you've been very, very lucky. You were the pilot of this
Yes.
mission, and you know, what kind of added pressure for you, Greg? Is it that you know you have to do your job as an astronaut, but now you're, you know, big man cinematographer here, and all these other things you have to do for a film?
It was a little bit. What I would tell you, I went into the mission thinking that, you know, my main responsibilities were ascent. The high energy physics part of this problem is very critical. Getting into orbit at 8.5 minutes of, you know, 7.5 million pounds of thrust. That is a big deal, and Scooter and I have to work, you know, correctly all way, or we're all not going to get into space. And the same way as when we rendezvous with the Hubble Space Telescope, that all has to go correctly. And we did have a problem where we had to work it out on the fly, so to speak. And so, and then coming home when it was all done and we were all fairly tired. We had stayed up there a long time. They had moved our landing time earlier each day. And so, you know, those 3 portions of the flight, along with taking care of Atlantis, which was my main job,
Yes.
and then if you throw the movie in, that was a little added pressure. I remember during the quarantine, James and Toni saw us in quarantine, which is pretty rare. We don't get to see anybody but our wives, and very few people get to interact with us in quarantine, but they felt it was important to be able to talk to us and give us one last brief about what she was trying to envision in the film. And I remember thinking to myself, well, Greg, don't peak too early, but now's the time to peak. And so when James and Toni gave us that brief, you know, I was, okay, I got my game face on here. I need to remember to shoot this movie well, and because it's going to document the entire, you know, the entire experience.
Absolutely. You know, you've been up there, and you know, you've done stuff none of us will ever get a chance to do. You know, it's amazing. But when you go up with your crew and you look out that window or whatever for the first time and you see Earth and whatever else up there, do you still pinch yourself going, man, am I a lucky guy?
I did, and I thought, wow, how did a young kid from Seattle, you know, end up here, flying around the Earth, 310 miles up, and you know, in one moment going across the Amazon, and you know, 20 minutes later we're crossing the Nile, and looking outside, it was quite an experience. And you know, you only had a few of those because you had something to do, so you could look out, get that experience, kind of remember it, and then oh, I've got to do this, and you know, move on to the next thing you have on your timeline. But yeah, it's really lucky, and I count myself lucky. So
yeah, bonding with the crew, you guys have to be pretty close to be up in those close quarters, I would think.
You know, that's a good point. And when Scooter, you know, got the crew together, we all got announced on Halloween '06, and then we had these little extra duties, right? And so Scooter says, okay, we need somebody, you know, to be the social chairman. And in my test pilot school class, I was the social chairman. So I said, well, you know, I'll be the social chairman for our crew. And we had stayed together quite a long time because we flew in May '09, and you know, we'd gotten announced in October '06. We had quite a few parties, and we have a big house on the bayou in Dickinson, so we bring the crew and their families and their dogs and everything, and everybody bonded really well. Yeah. And I think it's a very, you know, it's a very stressful situation because you're relying on your crewmates and everything has to go well, or this whole mission, you know, might not go well. As Mass would say, it could have been a tragedy. Yeah. But it did go well. We bonded extremely well, and I think you saw that in the movie. Yes. You saw people, you know, my crewmates were really good about just allowing me to shoot them and interview them, and Mass to interview me and the rest of the crewmates. And I think it shows on the movie how happy we were, and sort of relaxed, but you know, getting it done.
Yeah. So if this space thing doesn't work out, you're going to be a cinematographer now?
You know, I get that asked, and I think I'll continue to fly jets, but I learn a lot. And somebody had asked me, well, did you know anything about being a cinematographer? And I said, absolutely not. Yeah. I said, but I can be trained. Right. And one of the other duties I got assigned was John and I were the doctors on board, and we got trained to be doctors. And so if you can train me to be a doctor, I guess you can train me to be a filmmaker. So.
Man, you had a lot to worry about. God, it keeps learning more and more about. Now with Megan, I want to ask you about her because you know not a lot of women get to be astronauts. Wow, it's amazing. And you know, how do you initiate her into the boys' club?
I'll tell you, Megan is just we really lucked out. We got the pick of the crop, so to speak, and I can't say enough positive things about Megan. She is just a wonderful person. She is technically just on the mark. And it really doesn't show in the movie, but all those spacewalks had somebody on the end of that robotic arm, and the other person on the controls of that robotic arm were Megan. And she sat there during up to 8-hour spacewalks, moving those guys around. She did an absolutely wonderful job. She fit into the crew just perfectly. I mean, there was no issues at all, and I love flying with her. She's a personal friend of mine. Her family is out in California. I used to go to California a lot in T-38s, and so we'd drop her off to her family, and they're just so proud to see her, and it's just wonderful to go in space with her. It was just wonderful.
So I don't know what to ask. If it's more exciting, this Hollywood premiere stuff or going in space?
Going in space, yeah. I mean, I think the Hollywood stuff's kind of interesting. We did a kind of a presentation at the Motion Picture Association, and Toni and James were there, thank goodness, because they're our real technical backup. We're just amateurs when it comes to all these movie making, but it was interesting to see how this all plays out and to see the artistic part of it. There's a lot to that, and I don't think, at least I myself am not as artistically inclined as I'd like to be. You see that in the movie business, and it's something to admire.
Yeah, it's funny when you talk to people about when astronauts go to space. I know with my own kids too, they're always fascinated by the food. Yeah. Like how you guys eat up there, what you eat, and in the film it was interesting because you're just making a taco. Like how do you manipulate all that and
well, and it took a couple of days to not over control everything, to not move too fast in the mid deck, or to not lose things, because you would Velcro something to, say, a wall, and if somebody bumped by it, it got knocked off, and then you lost your spoon, and it turns out they only give you one spoon. It's like, you lose your spoon, you're not eating a lot of food. I mean, now it's all finger food, right? And so you have a spoon and a fork, and you got to take care of all that. And throughout the flight, people would lose certain things and regain them, and so that kind of went as you go. And it's mainly for the rookies. They have less experience at it. John was just an absolute natural. He would move just perfectly across the mid deck, and he was just like, gosh, here I am clumsying around the mid deck, and John's just flying through space just perfectly. So.
Do you have a favorite meal up there?
It was shrimp cocktail and in kind of a cocktail sauce, and but I honestly didn't want to eat much. I didn't feel like eating. All that fluid kind of rises, and it was like, food's not my main thing anyway, and so not a lot of eating. We certainly picked our meals, but I remember one day I opened up my drawer. It was about halfway through the mission, and the whole food drawer was almost still full, and it was like, crap, I got to start eating something more. They're going to get mad at me, So I ate a little more than I had really wanted to eat, but I still lost some weight, unfortunately. So
yeah, amazing. Well, congratulations to you. This is so phenomenal, so interesting, and just a pleasure for me to have a chance to talk to you and meet with you. Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Have fun.